Hey guys, welcome to RT Infrastructure Micro Lessons, where we cover short lessons about networking, network automation, and AWS. Today's micro lesson is going to be on default routes. And I kind of wanted to explain this just because in our previous lesson we had default gateway, and I kind of want to talk about both of them and how they're different and when to use either one of them. So, a default gateway is the routing table instruction used to get to another network when no more specific path is available. And it essentially tells us that if we don't have a way to get to, if we don't have a path or we don't know how to get to a certain network, send it all here. Send it to this IP address, send it to this next hop device. And the difference between that and the gateway is kind of just like tells us how to get out of our local network. So if we need to get out of our local network to get to another device, send it to the core switch. For instance, I remember in our previous video we set the core switch as our default gateway for the switch and for PC0. That one's also configured the default gateway to 192.168.1.254. So if we're trying to get out of our local network, we would send it to 192.168.1.254. Now, going on with that example, if we wanted to, say, for instance, go to the internet or go somewhere outside of our corporate network, if the core switch did not have a specific route, if it didn't know how to get to that another corporate network or to the internet, then we would set a default route stating, hey, I don't have a specific route for this, so I'm going to send it, for example, the router. So that's how we would set our default route on the core switch. We would say, hey, if I don't have a route to this network, send it to the router. And to give you an analogy on both of them, pretty much a default route is like the exit door out of a building. If a device needs to reach somewhere outside its network, it sends it to that door. Whereas the default route is like a direction used by the router or core switch. And if it does not have a specific route, a default route will tell which next hop to get it to. So um, very important to know the difference between those. As I mentioned, for default gateway, those are typically on a switch at least a default gateway, and then I mean like an access layer two switch. The default gateway is really solely only used to manage that layer two switch, whereas if we put a if we put a IP route on that access switch, that will actually turn it into a layer three switch, and that's when you can use routing and IP and that's actually routing traffic, not only just for management. And at that point, technically you can use either one if you did. So if you use a default gateway to SSH into a switch, or if you use a default route for SSHing into a switch, they both work. It's just whether you want that switch to be a layer two or a layer three. So this core switch would be our layer three switch. So we would probably have default routes in here. This layer two, the switch one, which is going to be a layer two switch, we can probably just get away with just having a default gateway on there, and that's it. And that would work. But if we did want this to be a default, if we want to like throw a default route on this switch here, then typically that's going to always be our core switch. So the default route would pretty much say on the switch one is, hey, if I don't know how to get to a certain network, send it to core switch, which is 192.168.1.254. So that's kind of like the difference between there. Typically, like I mentioned, you'll find that up here. Down here where the access layer switch is, you'll just see a default gateway. and then it just goes out. So, okay, so let's go ahead and configure this on our switch. So, go ahead and go into our configure terminal, and then we're going to go ahead and do IP route. And just to explain this command, so we have IP route, and then we're basically saying any IP address to any network. Oh, geez, make sure my zeros are not O's here. Send it if I don't have a specific path to it, send it to 192.168.1.253, and then enter, and there you are. So as I mentioned before, is any if there's any network, any IP address going to any network that I don't have a specific route to, we're going to send it to the router, and that router will obviously have a route in there. Typically, if it's going to the internet, it will probably also have either a static route or a default route saying, "Hey, send it to my ISP." If I don't know where it is, or if it's not in my routing table, and it would go off and do the same thing at the ISP level, but a little bit more complicated when when we're getting up there. So, all right, that will do it for this one. I will see you guys in the next one.